Oh, there you go.
Alrighty, let's hope that this is up and running. I am Stu, and I'm joined once again by Aaron for another episode of Four Doors and TCRs. Few little technical gremlins that we were dealing with for a couple minutes, but Aaron, how are you doing tonight? Fresh off of, well, not super fresh off of the 6 hours of the Glen weekend, but how you doing?
I'm doing very well. Yeah, we're a week after the race, right here in the middle of the summer swing. Got a nice little 2 week gap here, and enjoying it. Doing my normal stuff, working, and getting ready for a shorter week here with the Fourth of July here in the states.
That is true. You have the 4th of July this or coming up, it's Thursday, I think. And then of course I had Canada Day today. So we were talking about this before. It's like the what was it that you said that Canada just wants to have all of the holidays that the states have, but like on a slightly downplayed scale. So
Yeah, I mean, nobody knows. Did y'all get independence from somebody? We wouldn't know down here in the U.S. We don't know what Canada's up to.
I I actually I'm not 100% sure if I know the significance of Canada Day. I think it must be our when we became independent from Britain, but I'm not 100% certain on that. I should know that, but
Boy, yeah, you were sleeping in history class, obviously.
I clearly was. I clearly was. It's been a few years since I've had to go through a history class, but speaking of history, it is the Watkins Glen is now in the past. It is now history for us, and what a weekend it was. We had plenty of racing at Watkins Glen, of course. The highlight of the weekend, or the main show, is the 6 hours of the Glen. But we're here tonight to talk about the S's 120, which was the Michelin Pilot Challenge race. There was some Lamborghini Super Trofeo races as well, Porsche Carrera Cup, and then the second weekend, I guess rounds 3 and 4 technically, for the Mustang Challenge. Before we do that though, there's some so I was at the track. This I was camping at the track for this track side. Of course, you were at the track as well. You were not camping there because that would probably make your weekend quite a bit longer. But I wanted to tell a little story to kick things off of sort of a funny thing that, well, not funny for them, that we had that we witnessed this weekend. So the guys that pull in beside us, we're just intense, and the guys beside us have this big camper. They're some older guys. We've been camping beside them for a few years now. There was a lot of rain in Watkins Glen for the few days leading up to this, and while we were there as well, there was plenty of rain. So the the grounds were a little bit wet. They were a little bit moist. They behind this massive camper that they had that they drove up. It was, you drive this thing up. They're not pulling it, but they had a covered trailer on the back of it, and they had a Corvette that they brought up for the corral. And they decided to pull off of the road leading up to the campsite onto there's sort of some additional campsites that don't get occupied for the IMSA weekend, and they pulled off and sort of onto the grass here. Well, as they pulled off and they unloaded the Corvette, the camper, everything sunk into the ground, and they were pretty stuck. So there were guys coming up with their trucks. They were trying to pull them out. You're not getting this out with a Silverado 1500. You need some real towing power here to be able to pull this out. So they were getting a little bit impatient. I think they had asked some of the tow trucks at the track to give them a pull out, but they had to check with the track and make sure that the insurance was going to let them. So they went back to one guy. He had, I think, a Silverado 2500, and had a big toe strap. They were hooked up to it, and he was wailing away on it. Well, what happens? But the toe strap snaps right back and goes
Oh,
and punctures the radiator. The next thing that we hear is
nice.
just hissing. It's just
Of the
all
truck
up
or
in
the RV?
all on the RV,
Yeah,
on the
yeah,
RV. So it's like it's a big Peterbilt. Like it's there. This is a problem that these guys have to deal with. So,
yeah.
but what do these guys do? They eventually, the poetic just the poetry in all of this is about 3 minutes after this happened. The tow truck driver comes back. He's like, "Yeah,
Mm,
yeah, yeah, we're all good. We can pull you out, no problem." And they
wow.
pulled him out of there in like 30 seconds. 30 seconds, they got him out. They at this point they just drove the RV and placed it on the site where they wanted it for the weekend. And the whole weekend we were like, what are they going to do to get this out of here? Because we saw the front of it. Like this is not something that like they needed a new radiator. We don't think that they could it would have been a challenge to get it back into town, and so we were all wondering what the conclusion of this was going to be. Unfortunately, we left on Monday morning before they rolled out, but yeah, it
You'll have to
was
cut on the NASCAR race in a couple weeks to see if it's still sitting there. Yeah.
it very well might be. It very well might be. And they had their Corvette that they could get home in. So, but
Yeah. Shocking the
not
guys that tow a Corvette would do something like that. So
I
shocking.
know. Yeah,
Yeah.
you would never think that that would happen for sure. um but anyways, enough with what happened. Thought that was I wouldn't there's a little bit of humor in all of that, even though it was not funny for them. But we had plenty of stuff going out on track as well. And you know what? Let's just kick it off with the Michelin Pilot Challenge race. The S is 120. This is a 2 hour race, going back to the 2 hour format from where we were last round out at Mid Ohio. And we talked about it. The weather was a little bit interesting this weekend. It was very, very hot, and then we also had moments of torrential downpour. It seemed like at times. So, give us an idea of what your weekend was like there in on pit lane.
Yeah, so the weekend was, back to a condensed schedule like we're used to, even more so condensed this weekend where we had both our practice sessions and our qualifying on Friday. So really knock it all out on Friday and then go race Saturday about 1 o'clock. I wasn't there the day before. I got in late Thursday. But the crew, I think they left the track at like 1 o'clock, and at 1:30 it just started dumping rain. And if you're a crew member, a lot of us are signed up for IMSA. Will text you weather alerts, and like all day Thursday, it's just in a lightning delay, in delay, 15 minutes more, 15 minutes more. So yeah, I know it messed up the on track activities Thursday and pushed everything back. I think the grid walk ended up, or the track walk ended up being a lot later in the day, but we were actually really lucky to have no wet sessions out of the weekend, which I don't think many of the other series could say. So we ran dry, but yes, it was very, very warm. I mean, I was sweating like a pregnant nun in church walking to FP1 at 8:15 in the morning. So yeah, and then I think it's back to 73 or whatever normal, beautiful Watkins Glen weather. It is 50 weeks out of the year now. Like the day after we left, I think it went back down. So yeah, it was a tight schedule, especially between FP1 and FP2. I think we only had 2.5 hours, and that's definitely tough on the teams and not ideal because that's when you can throw your most changes. Really, the only time you can throw a lot of changes at the car and see if it works. And it really just doesn't give you a lot of time. If you're going to do a spring change or something like that, then you got set the car back down and check everything, camber, tow, all that stuff. So that was a little challenging. We had an okay car. We felt in FP1, and then FP2 we made a couple just more minor tweaks and thought we got it more in the window where we wanted to. And then Preston went out and qualified. At the end of the day, I think we were qualifying like 6:30 or 7. It was very late in the day.
It was.
He just had a little slip in sector 3, cost us ended up costing us 3 spots off of 2 tenths. If we'd had his sector three from the lap before, we would have had 3 more spots. But so we rolled into race day sitting P10. But that wasn't too big of a concern for us because we have had some successful finishes from back there in the past. So yeah, we went into race day feeling somewhat optimistic, but definitely the pace of some of the other cars was out of this world. I mean, you go look at the Honda and it qualifies second overall. If that's how you looked at the times, only one GS car was faster than the Honda that put on pole in TCR, and I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit. But yeah, so some cars were really flying out there, and interesting to see what IMSA does. I mean, when you go back and look at this race, there was a real trouble for GS cars to leave TCR cars or even get past them. I mean, we during the late green flag run at the end, we were with the same 3 to 4 GS cars for like the whole 50-minute run, pretty much. There was not a big disparity at all, and I can't remember a time where we've been in this window where we're just that close to the GT4s, and I don't know if which way the BOP or how much the cars get dialed back has swung. But yeah, it's definitely been talk amongst both classes in the paddock about the pace and how close we are in these last couple of races.
Yeah, that was something that I think I don't remember if I spoke with you about it. I think I spoke with Andrew, who's on the 70. No, he's on the 33. Um,
Yes.
the bright,
Yeah, yeah.
yes, okay. And I was talking to him that like it's because yeah, after qualifying, you look at the qualifying results, and yeah, it's a GS car that's leading the way, but just you know 8 tenths off of their pace was a TCR car. There was also the 33 was seventh overall, again smushed in with a bunch of the GS cars. So and there's a lot of mix up here, especially as you go further down those standings. So yeah, that was something that was very interesting to see. One of the questions that I asked him, and I'll ask you as well, is it, could you see sort of this developing so far this season to like there hasn't been huge BOP swings, I feel like, that has kind of led to this, but can you think of anything that has led to the TCRs catching up so much with the GS cars? Because there are some tracks where they're closer and they can be very close with the TCRs. But I don't remember Watkins Glen being this close.
Yeah, like when I would think to a close track, I would think Lime Rock was always the first one that came to
Yeah.
mind for me. Yeah, I can't say that I've sat there and thought too much about the GT4's BOP or anything like that, but it's definitely surprising at Watkins for it to be that tight. And it was, I know it was spoken about amongst drivers and to IMSA, what are they going to do about it moving forward? I don't know that anything will happen for CTMP, or it might not even happen until the off season. But certainly both of these classes are extremely dialed back. They have way more in the tank. The GCRs were running 200 kilos of ballast in most of the cars. So, we're running a lower engine map. So there's ways to tweak it. I don't know if that means slowing down the TCRs or speeding up the GT4s, or a little bit of both. But I'm sure if we see it the rest of the season, I'm sure in the off season that something will be done to adjust it. Because yeah, quite frankly, it's not fun for either class when you're trying to race your own race and you can't even. We sat, we rode around in fifth place and we're battling Bryson in one of our sister cars in fourth, and the only time we got apart from each other the whole time was because of GT4 cars, and it would take
Yeah.
4 or 5 laps for that GT4 car to pass us, and then pass Bryson, and then pass Road Shagger, who was right there in front of us as well. So it's just when you think multi-class racing, you don't think struggling to pass another class of car. So yeah, I
Yeah.
don't think it's what anybody wants to see. We'll see at CTMP. I would be very shocked if it happens at CTMP with such a fast flowing track, but I didn't expect it at Watkins honestly either until I saw
Yeah.
qualifying.
Yeah, it's it. it's even more challenging too when the times are so close like this because the GT4s and TCRs make their time very differently.
Sure.
Yeah, I noticed it especially. I noticed it more probably because I wasn't watching the race live in the moment at walk. Well, I was at the track, so not watching it on TV. But at Mid Ohio, you could really see, a GT4 inserts themselves into the TCR battle. Is able to get past on the straightaway, and then you get to the end of that long straightaway at Mid Ohio, and then all of a sudden they're backing up that TCR at that point. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, you mentioned that you don't might not anticipate it being like that at CTMP, but yeah, we'll have to wait and see on that, I guess. um, when it was all said and done, though, the pole time for the GS cars was the number 28 RS1 Porsche that got the pole there, a 154.6. They actually, I mentioned that they were 8 tenths faster than the TCR pole sitter. They were 8.5 tenths faster than the next car in the GS class. So definitely Trent Hinman found some good pace there. But going forward into the race now, of course, based on what we just talked about, there was a lot of traffic in this race with the TCRs, the GT4's. Um, you know, it there were a lot of incidents that we saw sort of in the first half of this race, but there weren't a lot of that at least that I saw punting cars off the track. There were cars cutting tires right off the bat in this race.
Turn
Um,
one, lap one, yeah.
yeah, the number 6 of Montour, the Honda, the pole sitting Honda in TCR just goes really wide out of the first corner. Turns out that they cut a tire, and it didn't end their race at that point, but that was a big setback for them. And there were a couple of others. There was, I think, an Aston Martin that lost a tire too in the early going. I mean, apart from there being debris somewhere on the track, which seems kind of unlikely at the beginning of a race, even though that there were other support series on track before that. Usually they do a pretty good job of taking the sweeper trucks out, going around, and especially any problem areas from whatever session had been prior. But are there ever any concerns that you have about a set of tires? Because these are the tires that were used in qualifying, right? Um,
Correct, yeah.
yeah. Are there ever any concerns that you have, um, or anything that you have to be really mindful of to take care of those tires between qualifying and race day? Are you taking
Well,
these sets of tires off in the pits and then putting an
so
old
you're
set on them to roll them into the garage, or
yeah,
what precautions are you guys taking?
so you're inspecting them, obviously. Normally when we pull in at the end of a practice session, for instance, we take the slicks off and go on what most teams would call rollers, which is normally a set of rain tires that you have on rims. So you always, just on the off chance that when you drive back through the paddock, you drive over something, you try to not puncture one of your $600 tires. So you can't do that in qualifying. They make you good drive straight back to. You can't touch the car after the session, so you drive straight back to the truck or to impound after that. But still, they come off the car, you inspect them. If you ever have an issue, you can go to IMSA, and without penalty, if Michelin says the tire is damaged, you can put one tire on the car, a new tire. So, like for instance, last year at Road Atlanta in qualifying, one of the Rockwell cars, he ran over the curb at the exit of five really hard, got into the gravel, and had an issue with one of the tires. We took it to Michelin. They said, yes, you sign a little document with IMSA and you get a new tire. You also can take those tires. Yes, you have to use the four tires you qualified on, but the RFID reader doesn't tell IMSA what corner of the car they're on. So you can swap
Mm,
them around. On TCR, you can move from front to rear, or
yep.
crisscross them. GT4s could do the same. So, yeah, not too much concern about the tires, but if you don't put enough heat into them early, I definitely see how you could puncture them when you run wide like he did and run over the curb. I mean, it's more likely. But yeah, you're right. There were a lot of punctures I had the GT4 car on either side of us. We had Random Vandals on one side and one of the Mustangs, the core Mustang, on the other side. They both had punctures in the last 15 minutes of the race come in in front of our boxes. But yeah, the track certainly cleaned before. I mean, we have an hour break between our race and the end of the previous race, so it always gets swept
Yep,
while and then IMSA does some hot laps and some demo cars.
true.
So yeah, it was surprising. I would say the tire deg was definitely higher there than we'd seen the rest of the season, really. But that's what those Michelins do when they're hot. I mean,
Yeah.
when it's 90 degrees and a front wheel drive car, the fronts are doing everything. You expect them to look way worse than they would, on a 50-degree day or a 70-degree day.
And that being said, I mean, as the race went on, we didn't see as many tire issues sort of creep in, but we also did have a lot of laps under yellow, so not
We
maybe
started
not.
the race under yellow. I mean, we
Yeah,
got
yeah.
the my
You
my
mentioned
poor my
getting heat
poor
in the
buddies
tires.
over at Alpha getting knocked around. So they had a little trouble getting off of pit lane, and so we went around them, and then everybody else went around them. And if you have an issue getting off pit lane, and the cars are still in the first 2/3 of the first pace lap, IMSA will go on the radio and say, give them their spot back. So they went on the radio and said, 76, leave a gap, let them back in. So, I told Preston to leave a gap, that the 5 car was coming back through. Obviously, that message didn't get conveyed to every car that was uh, had to get around the 5. And yeah, you just hate to see that. I mean, that's such a bummer. I mean, to do
Yeah.
all that work and to be out before the race even starts on something silly. I felt bad for those guys, and I felt bad for the Hart guys too. Certainly, they didn't try to do that, ruin their race as well. I mean,
Yep.
they came in, changed tire, and then they're sitting at pit exit waiting for the light to turn green so they could go out after every car would go through. And technically, I think they would have been fine, because you think about it, the first lap starts under yellow,
Yep.
so they would have been able to just catch right back up to the back of the field and go. But they obviously had bigger issues than that, because they were sitting there for about a minute, and then I see him I see him ask the IMSA officials to push him back, and then he makes the right turn down in the paddock. So I don't know what happened to them. I think they got back out there, but
Yep.
yeah, it stinks for both of them to have the race ruined before it started, and definitely made for a different start where we took the green under yellow. Or is that right? Anyway,
Yep.
yes,
Yeah,
so
you
we
took the
started the
green.
race under yellow.
Yeah, started under yellow. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the next lap starts like it's still the race start, and so we're still holding our position in 10th and leaving a gap in ninth. And unfortunately, Roadshagger slid up into that gap and didn't hold back like they were in 11th. That's what led to their drive-through penalty.
I gotcha. Yeah, because I remember hearing about some drive-through penalties, and it's always interesting to see how it's not normal to start the race under yellow like that, and then as a fan, that doesn't not watching this on TV, you can't hear everything that's going on. Trying to understand, is this going to be like just a standard start that's just delayed a lap, or what's going to be going on? It was a little bit chaotic.
I will say
We
that things like that are what really make you question how well you know the rule book, because
yeah,
it makes you start going, okay, hold on. Okay, not only is this starting under yellow a lap later, I have a car missing next to me. Should I slide over and take his spot? Am I staying in my spot? Are we going to be single file? Then race control says it's double file. So yeah, it'll will make you question yourself for a second if you know the rules really well.
so in that situation, so the car in front of you, the car in front of you has just spun out. Just essentially what happened to the Alpha. You
Hmm.
have to act on the race start as if that car is still there in front of you, correct?
Correct. So
And you said
so
that the Road Shagger car, they did not act like that car was still there.
correct. So they were in the correct line, but they should have acted basically like the Alpha was there until it went green, and instead they slid up from P9 to P11 to P9 basically, and
Yep.
that's why they were given the penalty. So yeah, I mean, who knows how that happens? I mean, it could just be the driver was excited. It could
Yep.
be a number of things, but yeah, that's when you're just really constantly communicating to your driver. I was telling Preston, act like the alpha's still there. You're still behind the goo car. That's who you're following to the green flag. Stay in your column, just like always. So
Man, it was a little bit wild, a little bit wild.
and
Definitely not something that you
I think
normally
IMSA
see.
had this start under review. I know it was under review still after the first yellow was over because they said during the yellow it's still under review and they gave penalties after it went back green. So yeah, they were. I think some GT4's had some penalties as well there. So yeah, it was an interesting start, and uh, I think that Aston Martin had issues like 8 different times before they finally threw the yellow for it. Like it would
Yeah.
start and then stop, and then it was in the shortcut, and then yeah.
It was in front
So
of us. It had stopped in front of us in the braking zone to the bus stop on the grass, and we thought this is not a good spot for that car to be parked. If you
yeah,
know, just off of the track. Yeah, it was. It was. I'm looking at the. It was 7.5 minutes, I think, or 10 minutes into the race. Sorry, 10 minutes into the race, we had the full course yellow for the Aston that was
yep.
hitting every red light around Watkins Glen.
So,
Um,
so we have that, and it's a short yellow, so nothing happens.
yep.
We're all holding position. Then it goes green again, and then I think the other Aston failed off that same team,
Yeah.
and because it was two short yellows in a row, we had a full yellow, and that's what opened up the pits, and that's when the strategy in the race really kind of starts to unfold.
So one of the things that I wanted to ask you about here is, so there's the minimum drive time for you guys was about 40 minutes, I think. Was
Correct.
it
Yep.
40 minutes per driver? So you mentioned there was a full course yellow not too long after. The last full course yellow actually in the race was 46 minutes into the session. But the short yellow period, is that thrown 15 minutes after the green flag is waved, or is it 15 minutes from the start of the last full course yellow period?
Either. So if it's a yellow within the first 15 minutes of the race, it's a short
Yep.
yellow. And if it's a yellow, if you've just come off a yellow and it's another yellow within 15 minutes of that one you just finished, then it's a short yellow. But you cannot have two of them in a row. So that's why that became
Yep.
a full yellow. Yeah.
Okay, because I'm looking at the flags breakdown here, and I'm seeing 46 minutes into the session. There's a full course yellow, but it would have been a short yellow. It was a short yellow because it was only 7.5 minutes of green flag racing that had taken place
Yeah,
before
correct.
that.
Yeah, yeah.
So
So yeah, that throws a wrench into a lot of people's plans there too. Yeah.
yep, and that would have put you at a kind of an awkward spot in the race as well because when you go back green, you don't. There's not enough. Even if you like, you can't immediately box when you go green because you're not gonna have enough fuel to make it to the end.
Well, some
You're
people
go.
did.
Some people did, and lots of people came up like one lap short.
Yes.
That
A
we'll talk.
couple of
We'll
them made it, but yes, a lot of them didn't. Yes.
yeah, interesting. I feel like the TCRs held off a little bit longer. There was some GT4's that came down right as they were going green.
Well,
Were, were,
I
were
know
there a
the
lot of TCRs that came too?
I know the 33. Yeah, everybody but four cars did, I believe, because
Okay.
we were running in fourth at the time, and I know that the 98 car and the 17 car had not stopped with us, and then the goo car, and then I believe everybody else did stop. I know for a fact that my team cars 33 and the 77 did stop as soon as and that would give you, I believe it was going to give you an hour and 3 minutes of green flag running, which was doable, but definitely on a pretty decent save number.
Yep.
We were in a different position because us and JDC and a couple others, the one time it was full course yellow, with a full yellow, I should say, standard yellow, we had filled up the car with fuel. So we were in a different position than the rest of them. So I think
Gotcha.
there were about five of us that did that.
And
during
the reason
the.
that you do that is so you're going to have a shorter fuel fill on your last stop.
Yeah, well, that's one, and I mean, there's a number of reasons why you do it, but yeah, that's one reason. Just gives you more options too in your strategy, especially for us. We were near the rear of the field anyway, so it's not like we were giving up a ton of track position. I think JDC pitted from the lead when they did it though. Obviously, it turned out to be a good strategy. They ended up winning the race. So yeah, it gives you. I do it for a few. I did it for a few different reasons, but yeah. So then you really have the two races break out. So you have the four or five cars at the front that are trying to push the pace, and then you have those guys that just stopped, and then they're coming back out and they're on a fuel save. And then when is everybody else going to stop? And how does it all blend out? Was really where the race was won and lost. To be honest with you.
Yeah, and there was some good racing that took place in regardless of what fuel strategy sort of either the cars were on. There was was it the Roadshagger Audi? Was it their Audi that was making their way through? They ended up running out of fuel with two to go.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
And just freaking stomped on it like you do in a TCR car
Oh
to
man.
save it as well. So yeah, that was a great save by him. So yeah, he had driven past us as well as JDC. So we stopped with about 54 minutes to go, and we blend out. 6 seconds behind Robert, who's in the lead. We had a little issue on pit lane that cost us 7 seconds. So we would have blended out really into the lead or right into the lead, probably battling Robert coming off here on our pit out lap. But so we're right behind Bryson, and at that point we're just kind of riding there and seeing how the race plays out. The Audis definitely showed that they had a lot of pace, uh,
Yeah.
and and so then Robert's up there 6 seconds forward on the road, and he's battling. Yeah, I believe Roadshagger was in front of JDC at the time, and then
Yeah.
JDC ends up getting around Robert, and that's kind of how it goes until the last three laps when all hell broke loose.
Yeah. Yeah. It was very clear for us. You could see every single lap that the Audis were closing in on Robert, and it was not a matter of if, it was a matter of when that they were going to get past him. As it turned out, the Roadshagger one never fully did, but the JDC Audi made their way around and were able to cruise off from there, of course, without any fuel concerns as well. Um, there was not the same level of battle in the GS class. I know that you don't pay as close attention to the GS class because, especially in the moment, because you have your own race to focus on. But in the GS class, there was some attempted stretches of fuel that just didn't quite pan out fully. There was the 57 Windward, and then there was one of the
Random
BMWs.
vandals.
Yes, the Random Vandals BMW. BMW looked really strong in this race. There were a lot of BMWs that finished up at the front of the finishing results here, and a lot of Aston Martins. As much as we talked about there being Aston Martins that were in trouble, there was a lot of them that finished up near the front. But there just wasn't the same sort of battles that panned out in the GS classes there were in the TCR class. We mentioned that especially in TCR, the final really 15 minutes of this race, everything started to really condense itself in TCR, and the battles were quite fierce. So for you guys in the final few minutes of this race, I think you were running about fifth or so,
Hmm.
and then the last couple of minutes, all hell sort of breaks loose. You have cars running out of fuel. There were, I think, two or three cars that were out of fuel in turn 10 by the time this race was over. For cars that didn't run out of fuel before the end of this race, there were some that didn't even make it to the bus stop for another to be able to on their cool down lap, and were
Well,
stranded out there.
and if you look at where the GS leader took the white flag, I think he took it with 20 seconds left to go.
Yeah.
So if you're playing the fuel game, you're so much of it's dependent on the GS leader and what could have been one less lap or not. But yeah, I mean, we're looking 8 minutes to go. I'm going, okay, I guess we're going to finish fifth today. That's kind of where it was. And we had been following Bryson for a very long time. Um, he was on a fuel save. We finally end up getting past him coming out of the toe of the boot with I think 2.5 laps to go, and so I'm going okay. Fourth place, we'll take it. Unfortunately, when you're in the points championship and your person you're chasing is in the lead, you don't feel too great about it. And then all of a sudden, I look up and the monitor cuts to JDC shaking the car like this. I was like, I mean, not JDC
Road
Roadshaker.
Shagger.
Then I go, oh, he's out of fuel, and so I told Denny he takes a white flag. I was like, oh, we're in third here. Maybe Robertson in fuel trouble too. So let's just keep chugging along here. And obviously Robert was fine. He put in a very nice drive, a very nice save. But yeah, so I was that was the most surprised I've ever been to have a podium at the end of a race. I was kind of was looking around. I was like, oh yeah, this turned out to be a pretty good day. It happened. It happened with one lap to go. So
That
yeah, it was definitely an interesting day in TCR. I think Robert finishes just a couple seconds off of JDC at the end there. I think we finished like 8 seconds behind those guys. We had over an hour of green flag running there at the end, so another long green flag run to finish a race. I mean, every race but Sebring's been like that at this point. They've all been like hour long runs to the checkers at 4 out of 5 races, which I can't say is the normal in Pilot Challenge. I thought it was a pretty good day. Looking at the GT4's when I rewatched the race, it was just uh, who guessed right on when to fill up for that last run there.
yeah.
The TGM guys called it perfect on what lap to come in and stop, and then hit their fuel number all the way to the end. Windward and Random Vandals and a couple others were playing probably not that crazy of an idea to think that they would have gotten one more yellow to make it
Yeah.
on the end, and they took the early stop and jumped everybody. It's just never, I've played that game too. You win some, you lose some when you're playing the bank for a yellow game. So it ended up being a huge day for both points leaders in both championships, honestly, because TGM gets the win there and has a pretty big lead, and JDC, doing what they've done all year, getting win 4 out of 5 races so far this year, and continue to pad their points lead.
Yeah, it was definitely a good day for the points leaders, and you mentioned banking on another yellow was not a bad idea. It certainly wasn't. I mean, we had 4 full course yellows. That includes that one that opened the race for us, but 4 full course yellows in this race. So
Which is right on track. I believe the average is 4.5 for the last like 5 years coming into that race. So, but yeah, only one big wreck on the day. The One of Victor's cars had
yeah,
a big blow there in the laces of the boot. Good to see that they were okay, and those boys were thrashing on that car, trying to get it fixed right after the race. It's kind of a tough. It's nice to have these gaps because you do have a little bit of time, but so many teams, especially the teams like Victor and the Alpha and other teams that are based in Florida, they don't bring their cars back and bring their trucks back like almost all summer. They go mid Ohio, take the trailer straight to Watkins, take the
yeah,
trailer straight to CTMP, straight to Road America, then come back. So you got to turn your car around right there. So there were definitely, I don't know, 6 or 8 or 10 TCR and GT4 cars after the race in the garage, turning their cars around right then to put them on the truck, and they won't see them again for 3 weeks till they get to CTMP. So when you have a wreck like that, it puts a lot of pressure on you guys. So
yeah.
they were working hard on that. The Alpha guys were working hard to try to get their cars turned around and put in the trailer. I don't know. In years past, I've known that IMSA's let you stay in the garage for a day or two there at Watkins to do that. I don't know if they did this year or not, but yeah. So the summer swing can be tough when, especially if your cars don't get to come back to the shop and you don't see your truck or your cars all summer.
Yeah, yeah, I know. We were walking through the garage. I can't remember if it was later that day or if it was earlier on Sunday, and we were wondering, why are there still some of these pilot challenge cars kicking around? Because it was my understanding that yeah, you have to be out of there sort of, Saturday night. You're packed up, and the haulers need to be out of there.
Most of the
Uh,
time, you do. It really depends on the track and
yeah.
what they do with your paddock when you're gone. So, at Road Atlanta, for instance, you got to be out of there at like 9 o'clock at night because that entire support paddock becomes parking for Petit Le Mans the next day.
Mm,
Same thing at Sebring, same thing at Daytona. It all becomes more parking for the WeatherTech race the next day.
yeah.
I think the way those blue garages are at Watkins, you're not parking cars in there, so I think it's a little more flexible there and a couple other tracks.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
But yeah, if you drove by CTMP today, you'd probably see a decent amount of IMSA trailers still sitting there, or they're still sitting at Watkins and they're going to drive them up there. One of the two.
Interesting. Yeah, I know that there was a lot of at least on the WeatherTech side of things, there was a lot of cars that came up and were testing just after Watkins Glen. So, which makes sense. I wonder if there were a bunch of Pilot Challenge guys that came up as well.
Yeah, and there's always a test before. It's just a matter of money if you're going to them or
Yeah.
not. They're normally hosted by Apex, but
Yep.
yeah, I mean, normally there is. It's normal. I mean, it's a session where you got a lot of cars on track together. I'll tell you the closing rate of a TCR versus LMP2 at Road Atlanta because I did a test with both at the same time, and it's about once every 3.5 laps.
Oh man, that would be a little bit scary sitting in a TCR and have or sitting in the LMP2 and essentially coming
In
up
in
on
a test, you got no cameras or anything, so all I can see is them come by the front straight, and then count on the stopwatch how many seconds they are behind, and say, "Okay, I think they're going to catch you in the back half of the track this lap." And
oh
yeah, it's
man.
probably a little terrifying to see. That was a former Formula One driver chasing them down on that particular day too. So
Oh
anyway,
jeez. Well, to sort of put a bow on Watkins Glen, I know we have some questions that we'll get to here in just a sec. On the GS side of things was the number 46 Team TGM Aston Martin of Hugh Plum and Paul Holton that took the win there. They beat out the number 95 Turner Motorsports BMW and the number 88 Archangel Motorsports Aston Martin, who rounded out the podium. On the TCR side of things, you can probably piece together based on our conversations, but it was the number 17 Unitronic JDC Miller Motorsports Audi that took the win, with the number 33 Brian Herta Autosports Hyundai coming in second, and then the number 76 Brian Herta Autosports Hyundai rounding out the podium. You guys had those Brian Herta Autosports Hyundais second, third, fourth, and fifth in the final results. I'm sure you guys would have liked to have first through four instead
yeah,
of second through five, but
definitely not a bad day, but definitely, yeah. Still, the goal would be to sweep the podium.
yeah.
But it was a very good day for us. And it's still, a good points day at the end of the day. I can't help that people are on the, points run of us, the century in front of us.
Yeah.
Not to be the person that keeps doing the math, but we would be in the points lead again after round five with the amount of points we have right now. But JDC's some crazy amount ahead of us. But yeah, it was nice to share it with Robert and Harry. That's who we share our truck with. So we are with those guys all day at the track, and yeah, so it's nice to get a double podium for the VW truck boys is what we. Don't ask why it's called that, but anyway, that's yeah, that's our truck partners, and yeah, good day for Brian Hurd Autosport, and a great month for Brian Hurd Autosport. Win the
Yeah.
Nürburgring 24, win at Mid Ohio, double podium at Watkins, winning class at Pikes Peak on the very next day.
Yeah.
So yeah, a great month for the team, and a month that they've been prepping for a long time, and I know everybody's taking a sigh of relief there at the shop that is back to just focusing on the TCR cars. It was a wild few months leading up to that.
I can imagine. I can imagine. Now it's yeah, all full steam ahead on the TCR season and the next race at CTMP, which we'll touch on briefly in a moment. But before we do that, we do have some questions.
Sure.
The first one coming from the YouTube chat tonight from Double DNF, and that is: do all teams that race in the GS class dream to race in the WeatherTech Championship, or feel comfortable racing just GT4s? I know we have seen a lot of teams and drivers make the step up from Michelin Pilot Challenge, especially in that GT4 class, up to the WeatherTech Championship. So it is kind of a natural step up. But is I know you've worked with it was last year you worked with was it
True
Triarcy?
RC. Yeah.
Yeah, so you have a little bit of insight on that side as well as you know every driver dreams of probably racing in some of the biggest, especially if they're on the GT side of it, and going to Spa, going to Le Mans, going to the Rolex, and competing in those cars. But
Yeah, I mean, I would, yeah, of course. I mean, I would say 95% of those guys would dream of being in WeatherTech, uh, but there's a lot of things at play too. Going into WeatherTech, if you're the person paying the bill, is 5-6x more expensive. So you might very quickly realize that GT4 is your dream because it's what you're going to achieve. Obviously TCR, same thing. But yeah, I mean, you look at the teams that do both, or the teams that started there and have stepped up, the drivers that do both. I mean, you got Daniel Morad, for instance. I mean, he's 24-hour Rolex 24 winner. He's running full season in TCR. You have, there's 15 other guys that are doing both series. Yeah, of course, that's probably where most guys want to get. But at the same time, I think it's if you're a gentleman driver, it's definitely a little easier on you. I mean, you're doing 40-minute minimum drive times
that's true.
in every single race. So, if you go to Rolex 24, your minimum drive time is 4.5 hours or whatever it is. If you're 65 years old or whatever and you're living your gentleman driver dream, that's maybe a lot harder ass than doing 40 minutes in the car. So
Yep.
yeah, there's a lot of things going on there, but yeah, sure. I mean, I would say most of us would love to get a shot in a WeatherTech car. My DMs are open if anybody wants to hook me up.
There we go. There we go. From Eagle Racer, I mean, not so much a question, but I've been to soggy races at Road Atlanta before. The races can be fun to watch, but soggy clothes and shoes, not so much. Yeah,
Yeah, what is it? 2008 Petit Le Mans, where it was like a legit hurricane parked over the track, and yeah. Also, I'm not even going to go down the road today, but hey, another 24-hour race this weekend.
oh
Another
god,
long time under safety car on
yep.
wet tires in the dark. So won't go down that one today. But yeah, we might as well just start parking them at dark. It seems.
Yeah, yeah, and you actually mentioned, June was not kind to a lot of endurance races in terms of, you know, uh, laps being missed, or some us being robbed of potential, some on track racing action.
Is somebody
Um,
add up the hours of Nürburgring, Le Mans, and Spa that were green versus yellow or red? Yeah, it's gonna be a big number. And if you were the Mustang Challenge, you could get like half a lap under green before it was yellow for another 15 minutes.
that was a pretty common thing amongst the support series
Yeah.
this past weekend as well. Some of those other classes, I guess I didn't touch on the winners there. I'll touch on that in a sec. But yeah, there was some wild stuff that happened in some of those support
But
races.
yes, I have also been to wet races at Road Atlanta, and I don't know if I'd say it was even fun to watch. Really, I don't like being.
Yeah,
I
because it
don't
gets
like being.
cold too, right?
Yeah, you just don't want to like feel like you've been swimming in your clothes when you're standing out there watching a race.
Yeah. I guess what yeah, whether it's cold or whether it's warm, it's yeah, it can be not that enjoyable. From Zombie here, do you think there are any or sorry, do you think, yeah, there are any rumors or word that GM will make another GT4 car to be successor to the Camaro? I think Corvette would be a good platform to base a GT4 car off of.
Ooh, can
I
I answer
haven't
this
heard.
one?
Sorry,
Can I answer this one?
go for it.
No. No,
No.
but I mean, if you, I mean, obviously they don't make the Camaro anymore,
Yeah.
and as a street car, and it's you've never seen Corvette make the Corvette into a GT4. So I would be very shocked if they did. It seems like they have a lot of interest at Pratt Miller in just the GT3 car that keeps them very busy as it is. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm sure for the people that are fans of the bow tie, it's a little disappointing. But if you look at whatever the 25 plus years of Corvette racing, it's always just been, a GT3 or whatever, a GT1 back in the day, GT2. But yeah, it's never been in a series like the Pilot Challenge. It's always just been in IMSA, ALMS, Grand Am, things like that.
Even those Camaros, we didn't see that many of them ever really be run that I can remember. I think
Yeah, I think obviously Rebel Rock had one.
Rebel Rock Rebel
TGM
Rock
ran a
had a
couple.
couple. Did they have a couple that they ran at one point, or did Rebel?
I know
Oh no, I'm thinking of
TGM used to
TGM.
run
Yeah,
some.
yeah,
Yeah, great sounding car.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, I mean, it's the same thing with touring cars. There's no American manufacturer is making a four-wheel drive, front wheel drive four-door car that, much less a sport version of it. So, yeah, it's a shame because there you could put a lot more cars in there, but you don't
yeah,
even Ford and Chevy don't even make a car like that.
yeah. I was thinking of Ford, like they don't is was the Fiesta? Cause isn't that what they ran rallying? I
Yeah, I
think
mean
they
that's
ran the
that's the
Fiesta,
last time they had a little hatchback or,
but
or anything like that.
they don't make that anymore, do they?
No, yeah,
Oh, okay.
I don't think any of. I mean, Dodge still makes a car, but
Do we
I
have like the Chevy Spark? They still make those?
yeah, well, you could call that a car, I guess. Yeah,
Yeah, that would be something to see running around the track. That's for sure.
yeah.
Let me see here. What do we have? All right. How do you balance the car in terms of setup and fuel consumption at Watkins, Glen? Would you rather have full drag on or middle?
Well, that's for me to know and you not to know. No, yeah,
Watkins Glen's a pretty high speed track
yeah. I
for
mean,
the
it,
most
it, it
part.
would be tough to go full downforce setup at Watkins. I mean, it's tough to go that setup really almost anywhere if you want to be able to pass. I mean, you can build a setup like that with a lot of downforce and be really good in the corners. But if you want to overtake people, you still got to do it. In braking zones, going down the straight, you got to be able to get close to them to be able to do that. So it makes it tough to have a car that's set up to pass. Now, if you have a car that's set up to you think you're going to put on pole and run up front all day, then yeah, maybe you could do that. Or if you want to have a car that feels very stable for your gentleman driver, or you want to have a car that's great fun on a track day or something like that. But yeah, and then fuel consumption. I mean, the driver can save way more fuel than any setup could. I mean, that's what it comes down to in these cars. Is
Yeah.
if you need to save fuel, your driver's skill level is who's going to save you fuel.
And then the final question here before we run through the other winners from the weekend. Um, this is specifically about GT4, but I think this question can be asked in a more general sense as well. How do you decide what car to pick for a new season? Is it based on whether you like it? Is there a more strategic decision? I know in the situation of Brian Herta is of course they're going to be running Hyundai's because
Yeah,
of the relationship that's there. But for lots of the teams, that's not necessarily the case. They're not necessarily tied to a manufacturer like that.
sure.
So, is there a lot of thought going into, you know, what the performance of this car has shown historically? I assume that there has to be thought about what the support network is like for certain manufacturers. What sort of goes into that decision making?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of factors. For sure, I mean, performance is a part of it, but at the end of the day, they're all very much in the same window. So to me, it's it's up to who's paying the bills first of all and what they want to do. And but it comes down to a lot more than that. If are there new cars available to even buy? If not, what used cars are out there available to buy? If you're buying a used car, do you know the history of that used car? Does it come with a spare package? All those kind of things. And then a huge factor is the support you get from the manufacturer. What is your trackside support like? Are they bringing a truck every weekend to the track full of parts if you wreck it or break something? Those are big factors. Talking about advancing into weather tech, you're going to look to partner with somebody that has a
True.
GT3 car or that needs to fill a hole and a void in a GT3 car in the future. If you're running the Honda right now in TCR and your dream is to go to GT3, probably not there, right? Because the Acura is going away, the GT3 car is going away, it's falling out of homologation. So, yeah, I think you see guys look at somebody like BMW who has a pretty clear path to go from their GT4 to their GT3. So if that's your dream, you probably want to stick with somebody, a BMW, Aston Martin, Ford, those manufacturers that can take you all the way with them, give you great trackside support. I'd say that would be one of the main reasons. And also, are you going to be a top priority of that manufacturer too?
Yeah.
If you're the 12th car that they have and they have four teams in WeatherTech, they're probably not going to give you the same attention as a manufacturer that's hungry to go do that.
That is some good points there. Some very good points indeed. To wrap up Watkins Glen, and then to before we briefly preview CTMP or Mosport, to run through just the rest of the results from the Support Series races. In the Porsche Carrera Cup, we had Ryan Yardley winning the first race in Pro with Alex Sedgwick winning race 2. Alan Metney won the first race in Pro-Am. Pedro Torres took race 2 in the Pro-Am class. And Richard Edge swept the weekend in the Masters class. In Lamborghini Super Trofeo, we had 4 classes that ran in that one. We had Ryan Norman and Danny Formal take the race 1 win in Pro, while Giano Torino and Ernie Francis Jr. took the race 2 win. In Pro-Am, I'm going to be terrible with pronouncing names. Chandra Sorma, last name, probably butchered it. And I did not get the first name of, I think it's Nolan Rieger. I forgot to input that in my
Uh,
notes, so that was a good pat on the back for me there. They took the race 1 win, and then AJ Muss and Joel Miller took race 2. Meanwhile, in the AM class, it was Dominic Starkweather in race 1, Anthony Bullock in race 2, and in the LB Cup, it was Nick Grote who swept the weekend there. But I do want to talk briefly about the Mustang Challenge here, and it was a sweep of both of the classes across the weekend there. Tyler Maxson took the wins in the Dark Horse class, and Zachary Lee took both of the wins in the Dark Horse Legends class. But we saw, I think this is one of the biggest accidents that I've seen in quite some time.
mm-hmm.
Certainly, probably the biggest accident maybe that we've seen in IMSA this year. Maybe apart from Pipo's wreck at
Does say
Sebring.
there's a big Sebring wreck I'm forgetting. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. That was certainly a big one. This one probably has to be pretty close. This was down into I think it was into the toe of the boot,
Correct. Yeah.
and I heard that it was rear brake failure that happened on it. There was a little bit of uncertainty as to whether maybe the throttle had stuck. I think I heard that it was brake failure on that car, and regardless, a huge wreck, a huge flip for Nate Cicero, and good to see him walk away from that. But I know you had an opportunity to sort of see the replay on that, and yeah, it was a big wreck.
I watched it roll by on the wrecker while I was standing in the paddock talking to some people and went, oh. So then, yeah, I checked Instagram and saw the wreck. Yeah, that's a huge one. That's a scary one. Just shows you how safe these cars are, though. And how effective something as simple as tire bundles still are to this day in dissipating some impact. And it shows you Multimatic built a really safe car off of what's supposed to be a streetcar platform.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a nasty one. I have not heard of what caused their failure, but obviously it's something pretty catastrophic to have that happen. But yeah, great to see him walk away from that one. Yeah, it's the second year in a row we've had a big wreck at Watkins and support race. We had that big MX5 wreck
Oh
last year
yeah.
in Watkins,
Well,
coming out of the S's.
and then even the year before that, in this same corner, we had, I think it was NTE Sports, in the WeatherTech Championship race. They got clipped by an LMP2, and they had that was a huge wreck for them. They went into the inside wall.
Yeah, I think that was Carbon in that
Oh,
Lamborghini, right?
was it?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
remember it was a
I
Lamborghini.
remember
I
now
couldn't
that now
remember.
that you said it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That was yeah. So yeah, just again a testament to how safe these cars are and how
Yeah.
dangerous. Everybody knows the risk that they're taking when they're doing this.
Yeah, definitely. It was definitely one of those moments where you see an accident like that, and the first thought is okay, what's the driver doing? And Nate was very quick to get out of the car and seemed to walk away, without any without. The worst part of it was the car. The car was in a lot worse shape than he
Yeah,
was, which
that's
is what you always want.
tough. Yeah, you need a new car there.
Oh yeah, we
Yeah. Second
walk
weekend
around in
in
the
a row,
pit.
we've seen somebody need a new car. We saw the BMWs get destroyed in Mid
Yep.
Ohio. So yeah, that's tough.
Yep, they did a good job of getting that together. So let's look forward a bit to CTMP or Mosport. It is, of course, the only trip that is north of the border. A little bit of a different type of track than Watkins Glen. A little bit shorter. It's 3.9 kilometers or just under 2.5 miles. And technically, it is 10 corners, although it does have a couple of corners that some serious question marks as to. I would love to have a discussion with the person who decided that this is a corner. But yeah, it's of course features a ton of elevation change. You look at the track map for this, and it looks fairly straightforward. But then you get to see the track in person, and there is a ton of elevation change throughout the lap. Lots of fun corners. It's more kind of like a roller coaster. I like to think of it as, and it's one of the fastest tracks really that we have on the calendar. There's a lot of time here that's spent, you know, in the gas, and it's
Yeah.
not just in a straight line that you're in the gas in as well. So, from your perspective, heading into the Mosport CTMP weekend, what are things that you're trying to keep in mind when getting a setup ready for a car, and what are things that you're going to be keeping an eye on going into this weekend?
So for sure, you talk about high commitment tracks. It's probably the number one high commitment track on the IMSA calendar. Seeing it on TV really doesn't do it justice to how fast the turns are and how much the elevation changes, and every turn is um, you're pushing and you have a lot of lateral G load. I mean, the only slow corners really are when you get to the back of the track there for a second, and then you launch down whatever a 3/4 mile straightaway. So I I was the first time I went there. Walked around the track, I was really impressed. I had always just grown up seeing it in the ALMS racing there, and was like, that track doesn't seem like it's got a lot going on. But when you get there, there's a lot going on. Great fan turnout. I mean, it was packed last year when we raced on Saturday, so expect it again. Yeah, as far as setup, yeah, you definitely got a different setup than you do at Watkins. You have to have a car that can handle a lot of fast flowing turns. It has to be a slippery car because you have that super long straightaway. You can't have a big downforce setup. You'll just get blown by on that straight. It's a different challenge. It's a very short lap as well. So you're looking at like a minute 27 laps in a touring car. I forget what crazy short number the WeatherTech cars were doing in GTP last year, like 107s or
Yeah, I think so.
something nuts. So an easy track to lose a lap when you have a short lap like that. Uh, I think it will be. It's normally one of the most challenging races of the year, honestly, from an engineering standpoint, because saying all that and how fast and intense the track is, it really does not throw many yellows. If you look at last year, we ran the whole race 2 hours, uh, clean, nonstop, ran it green, and then the year before that, I think we had one or two yellows, and they were early, and we had a big long green run at the end. So it'll be a challenging race. Fuel. I think if it's a race like that, I believe last year everyone was stopping and splashing at the end, or people were on really big fuel saves. So, shocker, we could have another fuel race here in the Michelin Pilot Challenge. But yeah, looking forward to it. 2 weeks from now, up outside of Toronto.
Yeah, now that you've mentioned it and put it out into the universe, we're gonna get like 6 full course yellows in this race. So,
Whatever.
well,
I like when there's yellows. I think it spices it up.
it certainly does, especially if it comes at we kind of talked about when we were talking about Watkins Glen how there was the front half of the race was very full, very, what am I trying to say? Fully loaded, heavy, front loaded, something along those lines with
Yeah.
yellows, and what the end result of that was is that we had a lot of fuel talk in the second half of this race with people trying to, they were taking different strategy approaches. So an interestingly timed full course yellow could definitely throw a wrench into lots of these plans. I think it's everything that you said about the race weekend is pretty spot on. There's always a great fan turnout. Expect it to be no different this year. I think that we're going to be seeing a couple of cars join the various classes that are more local to this track. I know I've seen some Instagram activity from Tooth Motorsport, I believe, who runs in
Oh,
one of the FEL Championship.
we
They
saw them a
have
couple of years ago. Yeah.
this time I think it's looking like they might be in the GT4 class.
Oh, okay.
I've seen they have a Porsche now, and it had the Michelin Pilot Challenge sort of banner
There
up
you go.
on it. So and it was a brand new car. They didn't. This wasn't used, so I have a hunch that they may be on the grid. I haven't seen anything confirmed, and then we should be seeing the Bakers back, but I think
And
they
I,
were supposed to
I
be on the
think
grid at
I
Watkins.
think Starcom, which we haven't seen since
True.
Sebring, is supposed to come back for this one as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I'm sure we'll. It seemed to always. You're right. We do have different entries in there. I believe last year in GT4 we had a one-off Toyota entry, and they ended up winning the race.
We
Uh,
did. I think there was. I think Parker Thompson may have been behind the wheel
I
for
believe
that.
you're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to it. My passport is still valid, so I will be seeing all my friends in Canada. Yeah, in a couple weekends.
All the friends in Canada land as we wrap up. I was wondering what the banging was outside, but it's fireworks that are going off.
So you guys really want to be the Fourth of July? Yeah,
Yeah.
y'all just come join at this point.
Yeah, it's true. I'll be there on Thursday. Okay,
You can
I'll
come here
drive
and pay
across the
for
border.
healthcare.
Yeah, yeah. I think a fun way to wrap up this episode. I saw this question and I couldn't say no. Um, are any other TCR cars that could come to IMSA? I'm still upset that Mazda axed their car. Although there may have been some thought that it could have been revived. Toyota, BMW, Volkswagen. I know a few of these have car. Volkswagen had a car previously that I believe has fallen out of homologation. There are some manufacturers like Link and Co. That races
Yes.
in World TCR. But any other cars that cross your mind that we could see on the IMSA grid?
Well, I can tell you one person who's very upset that the Mazda TCR got axed, and that's John Doonan.
Yeah.
I actually flew back home sitting next to him from CTMP last year, and we talked a lot about that. And yeah, that car got. I mean, he told me he still knows where the first car or the only car is still sitting. Never got to
Oof.
race. So yeah, it's tough to see. Obviously Mazda pulled out of. all the high levels of IMSA period in the last couple of years, and that's unfortunately how it goes with OEMs. You know, you have a new CEO come in, and the marketing
Yep.
budgets change and things like that. But obviously, they still have a deep connection with the MX-5s. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's a tough one. Toyota is an interesting one. Obviously, they have the Corolla that they
Mm-hmm.
run in TCR in South America, but they do
Oh
not.
yeah.
But they do not run it anywhere else, I believe, except South America. And from the little bit I know about that, and some people looking into trying to bring it to IMSA, is that it's not run by Toyota Gazoo in Europe,
Okay.
and it's not run by Toyota North America like the Supra is, because the Supra, I believe, is made in North Carolina in the NASCAR facility of Toyota. It's
Yep.
actually run by Toyota South America, and they kind of keep the car to themselves for now. I think it's only in year two of running.
Okay.
But the other thing is, if you want a new manufacturer to come into IMSA, is the manufacturer, it can't just be a team. The manufacturer has to be willing to do it because there is a
Yep.
financial involvement that the manufacturer gets into a contract with IMSA to run a car in the series. So, yeah, of course, yeah, I'd love to see some more TCRs come in. BMW, yeah, they don't have a TCR spec car. They have a TCX spec car, which you see
Yep.
run in SRO. You see Acura just came out with a new TCX car that you see running in um, SRO this year in TC America. I'd love to see Acura do it, but I don't think they are because they already have a brand in there with Honda. So
True.
yeah, we would love to see more cars in TCR, more brands in TCR. But like I said earlier, you need auto manufacturers to make cars like that to even be able to do it. So that's what we need. But yeah, to answer your question, I think Toyota would be the one that would most likely be close to being there. But from what I know, the politics, just very, very little of it sounds like it's not very close at all to happening.
It's unfortunate because that would be, like you said, that would be. Of course, Toyota has a heavy presence in racing around the world, but in North America, and they already are involved in the Michelin Pilot Challenge Series on the GS side. So, um, being seeing them come over and run would be great. Um, yeah, I'd love the TCR grid. It provides some great racing. I do wish that we would see some manufacturers come back and interesting what you said about Mazda with they had a car, they were very close to, it seemed like a program really coming to reality. And it's interesting how they've doubled down sort of with the MX5 Cup. And every year it seems like we hear about purses increasing in that series. And then one of the things to tie in sort of the single make series and what manufacturers are doing to kind of incentivize some drivers, or incentivize to come and run in the series, like the Mustang Challenge. I think if you win that, if you win the championship there, then you get a ride in a GT in their GT4 car.
Yeah, I think you get
Which
some type of scholarship to use
Yeah,
towards that. Yes. So
so
I
it
mean,
would be.
and that seems to be the way that the manufacturers are going. Look at how many
Yeah,
manufacturers have single make series right now between IMSA and SRO, and you have another one joining next year with McLaren
McLaren.
bringing their new SRO single make series. So
Yep.
yeah, I mean it's very interesting to see some manufacturers are all in and making money producing a lot of race cars, and then you
And
have
trying to create a ladder as well.
for sure in a farm system, and then you have guys that are just sitting to the side. But TCR isn't going anywhere. I
Yep.
believe it was at Daytona. It was announced that they resigned till whatever 2027 or 2028 with
Yep.
IMSA. So you won't see TCR go anywhere. You certainly aren't going to see Hyundai go anywhere. They're very strong behind the platform. Audi, who knows? I mean, now the
There's
rumors. I heard the rumor during the Spa broadcast that they might be coming back with a new GT4 and GT3 car. You don't know what those guys are doing. Honda obviously just relaunched the car last year, but they don't have a factory supported team or anything right now. And then
I'm surprised we don't see more Hondas on the grid,
yeah,
like more
well,
of the new
they're.
ones.
Have you seen how much a new one cost?
I have not.
Yeah, you
So,
could buy a GT4 car for that price. So I think
all right.
that is one of the problems is that you couldn't go buy a new GT4 for the price of that new TCR. So honestly, if you just want the answer, I think that's probably one of the things that's holding the Honda back. I
Makes
I don't
sense.
know what they're going to do to adjust that or anything like that.
I mean, they ran faster than a lot of GT4s in qualifying, so
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, you get the bang for your buck. I see one more question here that I could answer just a little bit. It says, "What's the big jump from GT4 to LMP3?" So I could say something about the TCR jump to LMP3. So last year, Denny was given the chance at like literally last minute to run an LMP3 car at Lime Rock in the VP Challenge. He literally found out Thursday morning when he was getting in his car to drive down to the track. So he didn't even get to run. I think he went back in his house and ran 20 minutes on the sim in the LMP3 before he got into his car and drove down to Lime Rock from Canada. Obviously, a lot of big differences. A way more power car, way more downforce. That's a rear-wheel drive car. What driver assist it has versus a TCR and doesn't. Um, I will say what he always told me was the biggest physical challenge was how much more downforce that car made in the turn. He kept getting out of the car and going, "My neck hurts." He goes, "I should have been working out my neck more like an F1 driver would." That's how much lateral load it was putting on his neck, and that was like 25-minute practices. He was feeling that.
yeah.
So yeah, the car is definitely when you go to a downforce car like that off of a street car based car like GT4 TCR, it is a huge jump up in what you have to do physically, and obviously your reaction times, everything's becoming faster. The car is faster and all that. But yeah, that's just a little tidbit I know from when Denny got in and went podium, very first time ever driving an LMP3 car, and he had 50 minutes worth of practice before that, and he went P3 on the day.
Jeez. It would be a bit of a jump, I'm sure, going from a TCR to the growling LMP3 car, but I did not know that. I didn't catch that he did that race at Lime Rock. So,
Yeah, that was last year. He raced 3 races that day, and literally
oof,
the LMP3 race ended. He got out of the car, and it was the only race all year where we didn't have a big pre-race ceremony because everything's on Saturday at Lime Rock.
yep.
So I think he had 10 minutes from the time he parked the car to be sitting in our box as we started the race, and he was right back in the car. So yeah, that was a very fast-paced day for him.
Indeed, indeed. I guess to wrap it up, speaking of the VP Sports Car Challenge, they will be at CTMP as one of the support series there, along with the Michelin Pilot Challenge, and also joining the support series docket on the weekend is the MX5 Cup. The Swarm of Angry Bees will be back for, I
Yeah.
believe it's the first time since 2017. So I know I'm thoroughly looking forward to seeing them tackle the roller coaster of CTMP.
I think you'll see some drafting down the back straight there at CTMP with those guys. That should be good.
I think we shall, and I think we'll probably also see some of those Mazdas drifting through the grass at the end of that straightaway, knowing how they're usually they're bumping pretty late into the corners or through the corners a lot of the time. So, um,
And this is the return of the regular IMSA schedule for these next 4 races. So yeah, you'll see TCR or you'll see Pilot Challenge go practice 1, practice 2 on Friday, and then qualify at 8 in the morning, and then race about 1 or 2 p.m. That's how we go the next 4 weekends out. So and then all of a sudden you're at Road Atlanta and it's over. So halfway through the season.
now I know we keep trying to allude that we're going to wrap it up. From your perspective, do you like that sort of more traditional schedule more being in the pilot challenge, or did you end up liking the condensed schedule that we had, for instance, at Watkins?
No, I didn't love the walk-in schedule. I mean, like I said, the most time you'd like to have is between FP1 and FP2 to look at your data, talk to your drivers, talk to your car chief, and figure out what kind of changes you want to make, and then let them have the time to make them, and then also have the time to go through things you might not think about, like pre-race tech to make sure your car will pass inspection and all those kind of things. So yeah, I like having the gap more there. And then honestly, at Watkins, we were like standing around staring at each other because we had like a 6.5 hour break between FP2 and qualifying, and we ended up just all staring at each other, talking to each other for a couple hours, and then you're at the track really late, tearing down the cars after qualifying to get ready for race the next day. So I think most guys would tell you they like the schedule better. Obviously, you're never going to sleep in on a Saturday with that schedule, though. I mean, we'll be at the track at 5 something in the morning probably with a 8 a.m. rollout time. But I think it's probably the best schedule you can get. I do miss racing at the end of the day for the Saturdays, which is what we did for a number of years. But we have a different schedule this year, and it's not too bad at the end of the day because you're packed up and you're in the
True.
car and you're not there till 10 at night and then driving to the hotel and then get on a plane at 6 in the morning the next day.
Very true. Very true. Well, I think that's a good spot for us to leave it. Of course, another great race at Watkins Glen, not just in the Michelin Pilot Challenge, but there was also some interrupted good racing in many of the other support series. Hopefully, we'll see a few less full course yellows when the road show travels north of the border to CTMP in just I guess a little bit over a week and a half. But this has been yet another episode of Four Doors and GT4's. I'm Stu. Once again, thanks, Aaron, for popping in tonight. I hope that you guys all enjoyed the show, and we will talk to you in the next one.
See ya. That was for you.